We're sitting here today with my bestest new friend in the world. I don't know,
This is
Miss
wonderful.
Newell. And Miss Newell, I wanted to talk to you a little bit today to talk about the Malloy Jordan Library and the important heritage of that in our neighborhood.
Well, let me tell you, that library was over on 6th Street when I was a kid.
Yes, ma'am.
And it has moved around. It was on Chestnut, I think, and then 6th Street. And then it came up to where it is. I wept when they closed that down. That is the beginning of education. If we close our libraries, then we are so ignorant. The computer's fine, but my God, we have to put stuff in the computer to make it work.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And in order to get stuff, we will always have a library.
Yes, ma'am.
And I am so glad, Mr. Burton, that you have decided that you wanted to revive it, bring it back,
Yes, ma'am.
encourage parents to go. I will get in my little gizmo and go up there with them and
Yes,
help
ma'am.
them read.
And it's exciting because, as I was telling, when I looked at the history of the library in 1954, the library actually looked like the Central Library. Go ahead.
It was a great library, and I had one of the teachers who was here was a librarian at that time, and she brought in black authors.
Okay.
Anna Bontemps was one of the first black authors that I remembered, and I was in the 7th or 8th grade when that happened. But she would have little stories for us, and the people who had written books, authors, she would bring them down to the library. So I've been a library bug for a long, long time. And I brought up my kids in the library, and they hopefully have brought up their kids. So both of my daughters are medical doctors, and I have one granddaughter who is a medical doctor, and the other one, I've got a granddaughter who married a doctor, and she's
So the doctors are running in the family.
Doctors in my family, and it runs in my family even from slavery. I understand way back. But anyway, you just can't get away from reading, and we can't read too much.
Cannot read too much.
I am so glad, Mr. Burton, that and I will do whatever I can to promote that and help do it. I was there when they changed it to the Malloy Jordan.
Okay.
I was out there that day.
Okay.
And they, in fact, Dr. Malloy was living at that time. Okay. He's passed away since then. But I am so glad because we need it. And we have not had any person to promote the library on the outside, as I say, just a regular citizen. The librarians do, I guess Sylvia and all those, but we need people like you who out in the community. You're touching everybody, and you're bringing us back to our roots.
I really appreciate that.
That's a historic site that we really need to keep alive. Yeah.
One of the other things I want to ask you while I have you here with me, one of the things we talked about was the shopping center and trying to create and revive the economy in the East Winston area. Tell me a little bit more about, you gave me some history on the shopping center, and then you talked about the fact that we needed to do more things to bring more businesses and more urban development and more entrepreneurship to East Winston, and trying to get the citizens to buy into that part of it.
Well, when I was down on the Board of Aldermen, we did not have a shopping center here, and I used to go 5 miles, my husband and I, to get a loaf of bread. But we brought the shopping center here, and we got, I guess it was a UDAG, a federal grant that brought the shopping center, and it has thrived really ever since. But that is the only one. And by the way, I must tell you, and I say it with, I say it because I'm embarrassed. I wanted a second shopping center. I wanted a Lowe's, and they wanted to come in to East Winston, but the community said we've got one shopping center and that's enough. So I can't say anything about that because it's still here.
It is.
The shopping center is here, but we need other things that will bring people into East Winston. A lot of space is here that can be used, and we can start our own little shops. You don't remember, you're too young, but when I first came to Winston, we had a black community that was all complete. We didn't have to go anywhere to do whatever we need. All of our groceries, all of our schools were all in East Ward or in East Winston. Our, if you want to call it, the churches, of course. And then we also had things, cleaning establishments, places where you could get your clothes clean. Everything that we needed was in East Winston because it was more or less segregated.
Right.
And with integration, a lot of that has been destroyed. And in fact, the library was destroyed. After integration came, it was thought that we would go out to the library on Fifth Street. But I guess the older ones didn't, but the little ones, that's where I carried my kids. When they were tiny, they were on my hips, and I carried them to the library and listened to the stories. That's why you have to train a kid to go to the library. You have to train a kid to read when he's at that level. And if you don't have any facility where you're training them, they just go on like, not knowing it or not having the information to do it. Because there's no other library that we would go to except the Malloy Jordan. And I understand it's going down.
Yes, ma'am. And again, that's one of the
hour
things
by hour.
One of the things we want to do is try to rejuvenate that as a part of our plan and our candidacy and running.
I will be so glad to help, and I will do anything in the world that I can to help you bring that library back. I just don't see how how anybody can go through life without having a library and a newspaper and those things to keep us abreast. And now you can keep the computer, but if you don't have the computer, you can get the newspaper. And I try to read 2 newspapers and 2 or 3 magazines every week. I try to read the newspaper every day, 2 of them, if I can. And I still don't have all the news. And I wonder what happens to people that don't have a newspaper in their homes.
They have to believe that stuff that they see on TV.
That's right.
And that's not the best thing.
That's absolutely. And so we are behind, and we'll be behind as long as our community is depleted from that kind of thing. We need to have them. We need to have the libraries. If anything, we need 2.
Yeah, I agree with you there also.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking time, and I'm excited.
Well, I'm glad to do it, and I know that there are other people in my community, and people who have children. Golly, they ought to be really mad because the library has closed.
And we're going to work on reopening, making sure that we can do the things that are necessary, that is equipped with the things that are necessary so children can learn. As you and I both know, as educators.
We can start. We're getting started late, but we can get started. And I'm with everything. Education begins with life.
Yes, ma'am. It does.
And you never get educated. You're dead. Education lasts always. And my mother said, put it in the head and you can't get it out.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what we need to do for our children. Put the education in their head. Go as far as you can go. And that is what we insisted on our girls doing. And both of them are medical doctors, but it's in the family. My brother was a doctor, and then I had a cousin who went to University of Syracuse in New York. He finished in 1925, and he was a doctor in New York City. So, he was smart. His mother took him to Winston-Salem State. He finished that. Then he finished Lincoln University, and then he went to Syracuse, which was totally all white,
Mm-hmm.
So that has not changed. And when we try to change that, I don't know what's going to happen to this country. When we cut off education, you try ignorance. I want you to try ignorance. If education doesn't work, try ignorance.
Definitely
That is the worst thing that ever. We can't get a job. You can't go places. You can hardly. You can't read the signs.
Right.
You know how right, left, up, down, tall, short, and all of these, and the stock page, money, and the economy. All of these things depend on education. And it must be important because during slavery, they wouldn't let blacks read.
Yes, ma'am.
They would whip them if somebody taught them how to read. They didn't want them to vote. Voting is powerful. And we ought to do all of these things now. And we ought to turn them around, and we ought to be ahead of the game when it comes to voting, when it comes to education. All of the things that they kept away from us, we ought to grab it now and be successful in it. And that's what I have tried to do.
I agree. Welcome to the Only Tony team. Welcome to the Synergy team. And
Well,
only
thank you.
your vote can make a difference.
I know it. In one vote can some people have been voted in with one vote.
Yes, ma'am.
I have voted every year since I was 21. Had to be 21 to be registered, and I registered here. I think in Winston. I think I was here. Or I might have been in Raleigh. I don't know. But at any rate, I have voted every year except one. And one year I was in Europe.
Okay.
And forgot to get my absentee ballot.
I understand.
I forgot it, and I was over there when the election came. But since then, I have voted for in every election that we've had,
Right.
and proud of it.
We're proud of you too.
In a lot of cases, my candidate has won, which I'm glad because I'm trying to pick a good candidate.
All right.
Candace's gonna look out for us.
Yes, ma'am.
And
I
Dr.
will
Burton, I
definitely
think
do
that you're going to do that, and I'm just glad to support you in any way that I can to help, and particularly with education, because we don't have anybody out there hollering education. We have very few, even the people on the school board. I don't hear them hollering education.
Yes, ma'am.
Now they should. I know that Vic has in the past,
Yes, ma'am.
but we've got a number of them out there that are not as anxious as I am. The 900 kids that can't read, that keeps coming out in the paper, I'm reading that, and that disturbs me.
Yes, ma'am.